New Orleans Saints quarterback Derek Carr said that the team is very excited about their new offense, but will they be able to get it under their feet in time to prove it? We got all that and a little bit of Lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints for Saints News Network on SI. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to take a look at how the national kind of view on the New Orleans Saints is skewed and not very well educated. We're also going to take a look at the rest of the makeup of the offensive line. A lot's being made of left tackle, right tackle, who's going to play where, but what about the rest of the O-line? We're going to break that down, and we're going to start everything off today with Derek Carr's comments on how excited the team is with its 2024 offense, a new offense that Klint Kubiak has brought in. But my big question is, will they be able to get it together and get it figured out early enough to prove that that excitement is warranted? We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day, and for being an everydayer here on the podcast, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Derek Carr says that he and the New Orleans Saints are very excited about the new offensive system. I'll tell you why they're excited here in just a moment, but one of my big questions is whether or not this team will be able to get it under its feet quick enough to be able to prove that. Remember, it took the Saints 12 weeks last year before their offense kind of really started to find its rhythm. So one of my biggest question marks is, with a whole new offense and a whole new offensive coordinator and a whole new offensive coaching staff, with the exception of Clancy Barone and a few of the offensive assistants, are we going to see a long time? Is it going to take a long time for this team to really get this new offense under its belt, under its feet, before they really get going in 2024? You certainly hope not. And I don't have an answer right now. We just kind of have to wait and see how it goes. But I will say, Derek Carr and the rest of the offense look very comfortable with what they were doing. I will say that there's one thing that stood out to me from Derek Carr's presser that kind of alleviates, I don't want to say it alleviates my concern, but maybe lays the groundwork for my concern to be alleviated. You feel me? It's like one little piece up against a much larger concern. But one of the things that he did mention is that a lot of what the New Orleans Saints are doing in Klint Kubiak's offense are some of the things they started doing late last year, where the offense started to pick up. And we can't deny the fact that the offense was better at the end of the season in 2023 than it was at the beginning of the season in 2023. They did improve at the end of the year. It just took a much longer time than it should have. But it was interesting to kind of hear him mention that. Also interesting to hear Dennis Allen talk about things like attention to detail, right? Higher standard of expectation, things like that. Kind of makes you wonder, okay, so what was the deal last year? Where was that attention to detail? What was the standard of expectation last year, or the expected standard last year? But that's all said and done, so we don't have to worry about that. But it seems like things are in a better place now. And so it doesn't alleviate my concern entirely, but it certainly starts to lay the groundwork. The reason why this team is excited about what they're seeing is because of the fact that they're being asked to do things and they're being put in an offense that kind of complements what it is that they all do a lot better. Chris Olave is able to utilize his speed. A.T. Perry able to utilize his speed, but also his positioning and ability to position, particularly in the middle of the field. Derek Carr is actually attacking the middle of the field. Did take a little bit, a few more of those check downs than you'd like to see at OTAs, but hey, maybe that's just a credit to the New Orleans Saints first team defense, taking away some of the big things there. Dennis Allen has been coaching against this scheme for a long time, after all. However, I think that the other piece that I'm looking at too is the ability to disguise on offense. Now, we've heard and we've talked about disguise for this team quite a bit over the years, particularly with Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator and then eventually head coach and defensive play caller. Disguise has always been a part of what it is that the New Orleans Saints defense does. They try to make everything look the same for the opposing quarterback. Now, what the New Orleans Saints want to do is take a page out of Los Angeles Rams book effectively. And I give Sean McVay a lot of credit for this, more than I give Kyle Shanahan credit for this, although the Shanahan offense, quote unquote, has always kind of implemented this as well. But I give Shanahan the credit for taking it to another level, make everything look the same over on the offensive side. So what we're seeing now is everything looking the same on the offensive side. We're seeing rollouts, play action, and motion all during OTAs. We're seeing shortened play calls in terms of verbiage. And we're seeing less like switch and change and all these other pieces in terms of this personnel group. No, now we're going to switch to this personnel group for this play call and so on and so forth. So I give the Saints credit for pursuing all of that. But the thing that I still have my qualms about, the things that I still place my hesitation around, is whether or not they can understand, deploy, and get comfortable with this new offense quickly. If they do that, then I think that this offense can impress and surprise early on in 2024. I don't think it's necessarily all going to be there week 2. I don't think it's necessarily all going to be there week 3, but can it all be there week 4? Can it all be there week 5? If we start getting into week 6, week 7, week 8, week 12, then we've got some concerns, right? And it's okay to have those concerns. But I did appreciate and understand where Derek Carr was coming from in this idea. I do think that this offense will better fit the talent that the New Orleans Saints have. I mean, Alvin Kamara is a case study in this, right? Constantly being run in between the tackles and all these other things. But he's so electrifying on the outside when you can get him into space, all those things. You look at Taysom Hill. We talked about it in yesterday's episode. Taysom Hill usage. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. Where's Taysom? There's Taysom. He looks great. Oh, Taysom's gone. All those other things. I think that's about to change big time. I think we're going to see quite a bit more Taysom Hill in 2024. And that's not to say that he won't take those quarterback snaps, as we discussed in yesterday's episode. He's still going to get those quarterback snaps, but I do think that he'll be on the field, it sounds like, a little bit more and from a lot more deployment spaces. Fullback, backfield, we'll call it. Tight end, in line, tight end, out wide, in the slot, lined up out wide as a receiver, all those other things. I think we'll see all of that. So I do want to give credit there that the Saints went out and found themselves a system that supports their talent. Remember, the narrative early on in 2023 was that the Saints were struggling too much for all the talent that they had on the team. Well, they didn't really lose a ton of that talent. Out of the 22 starters that played the most snaps last year, only 3 of them are not returning in 2024. Andrus Peat, James Hurst, who retired, and then, of course, I guess you could put Michael Thomas in there as well, but Ryan Ramczyk, of course, being the other ones where we kind of have to see where that all goes. But I do think that for the Saints, this is a real opportunity for them to actually be able to prove that, like, hey, went out and got the right guys, feel good about the roster, able to now take advantage of the talent. My biggest question for them, though, is how quickly can they show it? How quickly can they get it all under their feet? How quickly can they get it all together and then be able to display it? If they can do that within the first 5 weeks, you're feeling much better about this team, no matter how they start over the course of the first 5. They can start or over the course of the first 4. If they start 1-3 in the first 4, 2-2 in the first 4, and then they come out and finally get the offense rolling, you got a lot of the season left, and your schedule just got a lot easier because 2 of your biggest opponents just got, you just finished up against them, Dallas and Philly. And then by week 5, you're playing Kansas City. So if you're able to get it together within those 5 games, even if you drop that game to Kansas City and start 1-4, 2-6 to start the season, whatever, a lot of opportunity to clean up at the end of the season. And we've seen that from New Orleans Saints teams in the past. Those were all Drew Brees led. So let's see how quickly the New Orleans Saints can get this new system in and then take all that excitement and make good on it by being ready with it week 1, week 2, week 3. Coming up next, let's take a look at the rest of the New Orleans Saints offensive line and where we think things are still trending when it comes to Taliesin Fuanga and Trevor Penny. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. I've never been much of a car guy, but eBay Motors sure makes me look like it. Passion, drive, patience. They let me know that all of the different things that go into the formula for winning championships also go into keeping your ride or die alive. And now eBay Motors has everything that you need to be able to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. So whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered over at ebaymotors.com. With over 122 million parts and accessories, all things that you can find for your number one ride or die, you're always going to be able to find exactly what it is that you're looking for with eBay Motors. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit the first time, every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And all the parts that you want at the prices that you're looking for, you're going to be able to find it easy to level your car up to an MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. All right, family. Yes, the New Orleans Saints are moving Trevor Penning to right tackle. They're trying Taliesin Fuanga at left tackle, but it's not all about those guys. What's going on at left guard? And how are we feeling about Erik McCoy and Cesar Ruiz at center and right guard? We're going to be breaking all that down here on today's episode as we continue on. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream. First national sports 24/7 stream you're going to find on YouTube. None of the yelling and screaming that you're going to find at some of the other networks. Just the biggest stories from the local experts without all the arguing. Go and check it out today for free. Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Not only are the New Orleans Saints trying things out when it comes to their tackle positions, but guys on the offensive line that are incumbent, that aren't going anywhere, like Cesar Ruiz, Erik McCoy, are even going to the lengths of changing their bodies to be ready for this new offensive system. So we were just talking about Derek Carr being excited about this new offensive system, the team being excited of the new offensive system. One of the things that I think really illustrates the excitement of this new offensive system is buy-in. And Trevor Penning being willing to move over to right tackle with no complaints. Taliesin Fuanga being willing to move over to left tackle with no complaints. And then you got a guy like Cesar Ruiz, who just had his best season as a pro, dropping from 325 pounds in terms of his playing weight down to 314. That shows you a lot of buy-in, man. I was watching on Netflix about a year ago or so, this episode or this series called I don't know. It's about like the last moments before some big event happens and stuff like that. And one of them was about 11 Madison Park, the big, it was at one point the best restaurant in the world over in New York City and everything. And they talked about buy-in, all the guys getting like haircuts and all this other stuff, right? Like buy-in for these guys, so, being precise about the way that they put a plate down on the table to where they know in their minds which way the logo faces at the bottom of the plate and all those other things. Buy-in is really important, particularly when you're doing something new or you're trying to accomplish something, raise the standard. Saints are doing all three of those things. They're trying something new. They're trying to accomplish something. They're trying to raise the standard. And so when you can see buy-in from around the roster, that's typically good news. Does that mean they're going to win 13 games this year? No. I still don't know if they win more than 9. But is the infrastructure being laid in place for them to exceed that expectation? I think so. I think seeing motion, seeing rollout, seeing play action, seeing players being willing to give themselves a better shot by moving to a different position, players willing to change their body to be ready for this new system. I think all of those things show you that the team is working, right? I don't think that those things are for nothing, at least. But why? Why do that? Why change your body because of this system? Well, it's simple. The New Orleans Saints offensive line is going to be asked to move and move a lot and move quickly. And that's huge for this New Orleans Saints offense because, again, it goes towards what we were just talking about of putting players in their best position to succeed. Will they succeed? We don't know. We'll find out week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 17. But right now, in terms of putting the groundwork, laying the foundation for those improvements, we're seeing it. So when you see these guys that are slimming down and that are ready to go and play this system or play in this system that's going to ask them to move, they're hungry for it. They're ready to do it. Erik McCoy said this system plays to his strengths, and he's been the Saints' best offensive lineman for 2 years running. I think you can make that argument. And now you're putting him in a situation where he gets to do what he loves to do, which is snap that football, get to the second level, and demolish a linebacker on the way. This is a guy that once played, 7 overtimes in the Texas A&M game against LSU. You want to talk about somebody that's got a motor? Eric McCoy's got that motor. He's got a motor so good, it probably came from eBay Motors. There you go. So I love seeing that. And so when we talk about the buy-in, when we talk about the excitement, when we talk about the makeup of the New Orleans Saints offensive line, I think those are all things to keep in mind and to take into consideration. The other thing that we're looking at, of course, is left guard. Who's going to be the starter at left guard? Well, we saw Nick Saldiveri start snaps there during the OTA first practice. Then it became Shane Lemieux. I don't know. I'm not clear if that was because that was the plan. Boop. You get the first half, Lemieux gets the second half. That would make sense. Or if it was because of heat or whatever. But Nick Saldiveri's been in the heat before. Shane Lemieux was practicing in New York, and before that he was practicing in Oregon. I wouldn't say he's used to the southern humidity. So I'll assume that was really more about you get the first half, he gets the second half of practice. Now, both looked comfortable. Didn't see any of them do anything untoward or anything like that, or anything that would make you go, ooh, grimace. You know what I mean? So they both look comfortable there. I do think that the Saints could add more competition there. I've been on that Dalton Reisner train for months now. There's other players you can go out there and find and continue to add competition there, however it is that you want to go about it. But I do think that if it is Nick Saldiveri, if it is Shane Lemieux, then the Saints will be fine. Both of those guys have experience in zone run offenses. Shane Lemieux, particularly coming out of Oregon, ton of zone run. Over in Oregon, it's a Pac-12 school. Zone run is all they know. You know what I mean? And then, of course, playing with the New York Giants early on in his career, not as many starts as like a Lucas Patrick, for instance. Lucas Patrick, though, was playing as a backup center for the Saints, but he could potentially eventually get rolled in at left guard as well. He's got 50-plus games of starting experience. I think there's value in that. So Saints still have their options at left guard, but it's going to be very interesting to just watch and see how this all goes. But when you think about the guys that have the athleticism, the guys that could potentially fit in there, and knowing what it is that you're getting from Eric McCoy, what you're asking from Cesar Ruiz, even Trevor Penning, I think, is going to look, or how do I say this? Because people get really mad at me when I say good things about Trevor Penning. So how do I say this in a way that is a little bit more measured? Trevor Penning should look better in this offense because he will be asked to play to things that were his strengths in college. Now, he still has to improve as a pure pass protector. There's no doubt about that. Not every play is going to be play action. Not every play is going to be a rollout. Not every play is going to have motion. Not every play is going to have all of those bells and whistles. You might see it on a lot of plays, but not every play is going to have them. You're still going to have some straight dropbacks, particularly in third and long. You ain't running play action on third and long. You ain't running play action on third. And you're not running a rollout on third and 10. He's going to have to block in those cases. Brian Baldinger talked about exactly that when he visited with us during the draft, second day of the draft, when we were at the Saints facility for the selection process. So he's still going to have to improve in those lanes, but I think what he's going to be asked to do the majority of time are going to be things that end up playing to his strengths. And I think those same things play to the strengths of a Shane Lemieux. They play to the strengths of a Nick Saldiveri. We'll see if they play to the strengths of a Lucas Patrick if he gets role at left guard, at starting left guard as well. But I do think that when we look at the makeup of the New Orleans Saints offensive line, the mindset, the expectations, and the attention to detail are all there. Whether or not they put it together on the field, we'll have to wait and see. But those building blocks are absolutely in place. Coming up next, the national perspective on the New Orleans Saints feels very skewed and uneducated. So let's set the record straight. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at Yahoo Finance. Yahoo Finance has been absolutely incredible for me. I'm just now getting into investing. I went to one of those schools where you ain't learn how to take care of your money, how to invest, what stocks are, any of this other stuff. You didn't even really learn anything about the majority of managing your finances. So resources like Yahoo Finance have been absolutely incredible for me. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been at this. They're the brand behind every great investor. So here's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about how to take care of your own brokerage, to get into stocks, to get into investing, and all of these other pieces. It's a comprehensive perspective that you get from Yahoo Finance. So go and check them out today so you can get that comprehensive, holistic look at financial news and analysis. Just visit the site that's been behind every great financial investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints and the viewpoints of those that cover them nationally just feels skewed and frankly a little uneducated. So let's set the record straight here as we close out today's episode of Locked On Saints. Don't forget, we are your team every day. We'll be right back with you again on Monday, getting you ready for the second time that we get to go out there for OTAs. What are we looking for? What are we expecting? And of course, picking up all of the big news from around the weekend that may drop as well. So there was an article that came out. This superlative for the New Orleans Saints is the most likely to kind of run it back, i.e. to be a 9-8 team again. But look, I've come on here before, and I will continue to be here to say, I think as of right now, until we actually see them on the field, I think this is a 9-8 team at best. I can't project them any higher than that, at least for right now. Like that would be, again, I don't want to be a merchant of hype, right? Remember I said that? I don't want to be a merchant of hype. If you're a first-time listener to the show, you're not an everydayer yet, hope that you'll become one. That's one of the things that I've been saying most of the offseason here is that I don't want to be a merchant of hype. I'm not here to get people excited over something that will later disappoint them, but I am here to show you and tell you, hey, the Saints are doing good things. Whether or not it translates, that's on them. They have to prove that, but they're doing good things. But as of right now, those good things are not in a position to where I'm ready to say, this is going to be a 14-win team, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm not going to get that crazy. So I can give you all the real reasons why this team will be a 9-8, could be a 9-8 team in 2024. It might take too long for the new system to really set in, because that's what we saw last season. This team has had some injuries at major positions here recently. Got to watch out for that. Do we see, they were a bad team last year, or they were a struggling team last year because of coaching? Do we see that again here in 2024? They have an easy schedule, quote unquote, that's actually really tough. It's not an easy schedule at all. There's a lot of reasons, real reasons, to say that this team could be 9-8 in 2024. However, those reasons have nothing to do with the way that they manage the salary cap. Can we please get over it? The Saints do it differently. Suck it up. It's fine. Every league has a team that does something a little different. Every league has a team. The NFL has something that every team does differently. Not every team in the NFL runs motion over 60% like the Miami Dolphins. Not every team in the NFL uses 11 personnel 80 to 90% of their snaps in any given game like the Los Angeles Rams. The Saints don't manage the salary cap like the rest of the NFL manages the salary cap. We don't need to do this anymore. This is not necessary. The Saints have a 90-man roster, just like everybody else. And the thing that was really interesting to me in reading this piece in terms of the expectations around, what the Saints are going to be in 2024 and all these other things, at one point criticizing the Saints for the way that they manage the salary cap, at another point criticizing the Saints for not making new additions. So which is it? Which is it? Is it that they manage the salary cap in a certain way, or is it that they're trying to fix their salary cap situation? I'm sorry. We can't expect it all to be done in one season. Like, the Saints took a big hit during the COVID year because of the way that they managed the salary cap. That's where things went wrong for them. Now they're climbing their way out of what was the COVID-caused overages. The Saints are going to continue to be 40, 50, $30 million over the salary cap for the next season. Just write it in stone. That's just what they're going to do. That's how they're going to handle things. And it has worked for the majority of time until they lost their superstar Hall of Fame quarterback. Now they got to figure things out. And they had two options: take the hit for a couple of years and then try to build things back up, or just try to keep doing what you know works and then hope that you luck into the quarterback that you're looking for. We don't know if the Saints have done that yet, but maybe they do here in 2024. Maybe they do post-Carr, whatever. That's how they're going to continue to do it. Let's just move past the fact that the Saints do things differently. If they're not performing on the field, it's because they're not performing on the field. It's not because of how much money they owe next year. Let's stop with this. This is not necessary. The other thing that was really interesting was talking about the New Orleans Saints being a year older. Okay, so I just talked about the continuity of the team, returning 19 of the 22 players that played more than 500 snaps for them last year. Okay, other guys that departed that are notable that didn't hit that metric: Michael Thomas and Isaac Yiadom. Okay, Michael Thomas and his contributions, 60 plus targets, move him over to A.T. Perry, see how it goes. Isaac Yiadom, didn't know he was going to be what he was. Awesome that he was what he was. Got Kool-Aid McKinstry. Excited to see what he's going to be and if he can be a fourth starting caliber corner. If so, then we don't have to deal with that anymore. Okay, the continuity becomes more important than the not adding new pieces. Now, they did add Willie Gay, which didn't get mentioned in this piece. They also added Chase Young, which did get mentioned in this piece. So if the defensive front seven is performing better, then are we giving them credit, or are we saying, no, they should have been on more than 1 year contracts? We don't have to do that, right? So, but here's where I take issue with the idea that they're an older team. Okay. There are a couple of other teams that are in the top 7, top 8 when it comes to oldest teams in the NFL. You look at the Los Angeles Rams last year, they were in that number. Within the top 8. San Francisco 49ers, they went to the Super Bowl with a roster that was barely younger than the New Orleans Saints roster by the time that the season was over. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, barely. I think they were 30th oldest. So the third oldest team. Baltimore was right up there too. These are all playoff teams. Other teams included the Las Vegas Raiders, the Tennessee Titans, things like that. I'll be fair to myself and I'll mention I'll be fair against myself and mention there were more non-playoff teams in the top 10 oldest teams than there were those that did make the playoffs. But those that made the playoffs not because of their age, but because of their play on the field. Now, I understand the idea of being a year older when you're talking about aging players. Don't come at me for this. I'm not highlighting this for any reason in particular. I'm just being fair to myself. The Saints being older could be a concern when you talk about Derek Carr. Could be a concern when you talk about Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, who are all over the age of 30. Could be a concern for Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams when it comes to running backs that are inching closer to 30. Am I concerned about it, especially considering how much older quarterbacks are playing into the NFL nowadays? No, not at all. Am I concerned about it for guys like Cameron Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu, and Demario Davis, who have proved only that they've aged like a fine Juan? Then no, I'm not concerned about that either. But I'll tell you what, is it a bad thing that Chris Olave is a year older? Is it a bad thing that Rashid Shaheed's a year older, that A.T. Perry's a year older, that Carl Granderson's a year older, that Pete Werner, Willie Gay, Alante Taylor, Paulson Adebo, Kendre Miller, who's 21, 22 years old? Is it a bad thing that these guys are a year older? No. So where does the line between being young and inexperienced cross over into being too old and too experienced? Or is there a happy medium in between those two things? I think there is a happy medium in between those two things. So if we're going to challenge the idea that the Saints can be a better team in 2024, let's at least do that with the real reasons: coaching, scheme, change of scheme, health, all of these things. Schedule. Let's talk about those things. Let's not talk about how much money they owe in 2025. We're wasting people's time at this point. We appreciate you very much for joining us for another episode of Locked On Saints and for making us your first listen of the day every day. Make sure you go and check out Locked On Pelicans, Jake Madison and Caroline Fitton over at Locked On LSU. We'll see you on Monday, if not sooner, here for another episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks so much, as always, for being a part of, or making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.